And welcome to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and it's a pleasure to have a returning guest to our program. She's been on several times, Brit Elders, and she is going to talk with us on a bunch of other subjects as well, I guarantee you. But we're going to talk also about the book and DVD that are available that have been out for some time, UFO Contact from the Pleiades. You know, it's interesting, Brit. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoy this.
I interviewed a woman from Ireland just a week ago. We had a devil of a time getting connected over the preceding months. We finally got the interview in, and she is in contact with the Pleiades and the Pleiadians.
Hmm.
Now it's probably more. I'm going to say telepathic. I don't think she has face to face or anything of this nature.
Uh-huh.
But she does some channeling and so forth. And we started talking a little bit about these things. I don't know where I stand on all that in that regard. I mean, I'm not saying I don't believe that it's possible. It just seems to me that it's a whole lot easier than them having to travel light years to get here. I can only imagine how many stops they had to make along the way because the kids had to go to the bathroom, but uh, or to fuel up the spacecraft if they
Are
had.
we there yet? Yeah.
Are we? Yeah, and hearing that over and over again. And I'll be honest with you, folks, having some humor on the subject, I think, is important because I know
Yes.
that there are some folks who take this very, very seriously, and believe it or not, on both sides.
Hmm.
Those who say, you are out of your mind, we need to lock you up in a padded room. And then there are others who they don't want you to make fun of this at all because of the experiences they've had. I believe one gentleman in particular in Arizona, I think it was back in the 70s, and I think the name was Travis Walton.
Miss Walton. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And apparently he did eventually, I guess he went into some hypnosis, hypnotic state they took him into, and he found out exactly what had happened. I don't think he was real happy with the results. But
Yeah.
those,
Well, you
those,
have to take the
those are
whole
the extremes.
Yeah, but you do with Travis especially. You have to take the whole story into context because he was abducted. He walked toward the craft and he was taken on board. And then the experience on board is what, I mean, that was jolting to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus the fact that back in the 70s, and I know this well because this is when I started investigating this topic, nobody talked about UFOs.
Yeah.
It was something that was whispered in a back room, and you never said, "Oh, you're not going to believe what I saw. I saw this crazy thing in the sky." You didn't do that. It was a taboo subject. And Travis came out and said, I had this experience, and he suffered all kinds of hell for it. He really
Mm.
did.
Yeah.
That is one type of thing. But and there was evidence. I mean, there were people with him when he was abducted. So these other lumbermen that were out there with him saw the actual event, saw the craft, and then Travis went through what he went through, but those other men did also because they were ridiculed extremely from all points of view. There were very few people interested in this topic at that point.
Yeah.
Then you have the people like your friend in Ireland
Hmm.
that have, whether it's telepathic or face to face discussions, they're having some form of communication, um, but they don't have the physical evidence.
Yeah.
That, I know a lot of people want to dismiss that, but I find in all of the work that I've done since the mid 70s, there's always a grain of truth in there.
Hmm.
And so it's important to keep an open mind to it, not to dismiss it, and not to be combative over it. You know, is it real or isn't it real? Just listen to what's being said and let what's resonating with you have impact. If it doesn't resonate with you, fine, learn about something else. But if it does, pay attention to what that is because it will steer you in a direction for you as an individual.
Yeah. It is a conversation that has been coming out of the closet for the last 40 years to the extent that even our own government has declassified. Although I think I've seen some of the declassified documents.
Hmm.
Is there a reason why it's necessary to redact? I mean, seriously, in this day and age, I mean,
I
one of
know.
the phrases that I live by, I try to live by it regularly, is if you have no secrets to keep, you have no secrets to keep.
Right.
And of course, obviously, it's especially from a governmental and a national, international level. The only reason why we have espionage and we have the CIA and covert operations is because we're keeping secrets, just like the people we're surveilling. So
Very true.
knock, so knock it off. I mean, it doesn't foster a whole lot of trust in a family if everybody is keeping secrets.
Right.
But that does happen in families too. I mean, there are certain secrets that are kept. And it's interesting how because I did see some of the hearings that they held a couple
Mhm.
3 years ago, and I don't know if I had you on when we talked about those or not, and your impressions.
No, we haven't spoken about those yet. Um, my feeling is that our country, the US, is backwards at the moment. We're not caught up with the rest of the world, which is really looking at these subjects with serious interest. We're just now getting there. And that to me is very unfortunate. But on one hand, as an investigator, as a person who has worked with agencies around the world, because that is the profession of intercept, what we did was electronic countermeasure for Fortune 500s and for large corporations. We kept them protected from eavesdropping and wiretapping. So we had a lot of friends who were crossing over all those realms. I get national security. I understand that need. But at the same time, when we have so much information out there and more and more and more people are coming forward, even breaking their secrecy oaths to say, this is what happened, this is what I experienced. We have to pay attention to that, and the government needs to let loose a little bit more so that we can actually access some of this information that they have,
Hmm.
and not for the purpose of, how can it be manipulated or what's the media going to say about it or any of that. What can we learn from it? Because the key to all of this is what can we learn from it? I was very disappointed in some of the hearings because they went so far out in the let's be afraid of everything realm.
Yeah.
And I did not feel that was fair to the public at all. I think you probably do need to be discerning on literally everything in life, but you don't have to be afraid of it. And and that I think was a disservice to the American public. But any information coming out has value.
Hmm.
So it's important for us to pay attention to it.
Well, I've said this on many occasions, and probably even on this program with you in the past. If they were a national or international security threat, we wouldn't
Mhm.
be having these conversations because they would have already taken over,
It's
or we wouldn't be here if that was their intent. I mean, that's my
right.
belief.
That's
To me, it makes sense if we're seeing these things flying around the earth, and
yeah,
we've got pictures, we've got photographs, we've got video, and of course the book that we're talking about, or that's available in the DVD, about this
right,
gentleman who he and his family saw these UFOs and so forth. Well, they're flying around out there, which means they have technologies we can't even imagine, which means they've
right,
traveled millions or billions or light years,
right.
and which means they have the technology to do basically whatever they want with us.
Uh-huh.
And I know there's speculation too that these folks are folks. They are just all they're doing is they're checking out, seeing how their how do I want to their zoo, their farm is going, how the species that they've placed here are doing.
They're little brothers and sisters is how they look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, little brothers. I'll go with that, sure. And that's all they're doing. They're just observing, or for all I know, maybe they're doing a reality show, and we're the reality show. Okay,
You go back to
like
the
Truman.
Twilight film. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
little scary.
a little bit, but I look at it from the stand more spiritual standpoint that if in fact, and I believe, I don't know, but I believe that there is a supreme being, a
Yeah,
creator, already knows, is watching, is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. So what difference is if these folks from the Pleiades or elsewhere are watching?
right.
Come on. And what are you going to do about it anyway? And if people are being abducted, and I don't know that people are these days as much so as they were back in the
Right.
70s and 80s, uh, what are you going to do about it? You can't stop it.
Hmm.
I mean, you can't chain
Exactly.
yourself. You
Very
can't chain
true.
yourself to the bed or what have you because they know how to dematerialize you and then so forth. I mean, there's just so much about it that we, first of all, don't understand, but that we make assumptions. And then, of course,
Hmm.
the governments, they want us to be afraid so that they can
Sure.
continue to carry on as usual, as normal, with the quote unquote defense
Well,
of
not
the
only
country.
that, but fear creates control.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
when you're afraid of something, someone else has the ability to control you. One of the things when I was in Mexico investigating some things with my husband years ago, we met a mayor from a town of Jalisco. The city has 100,000 people in it. And we asked him point blank, are you afraid because all of your citizens are seeing these things? Are you worried about that? He said, absolutely not. If they were going to hurt us, they would have done it a long time ago. And he was just so straightforward and direct about that. I thought, how wonderful, because this is a place, this little wonderful town of Atlisco. Everybody goes out on the weekends and they climb this hill called Casita Blanca, put their beer coolers out and their lawn chairs, bring grandma, grandpa, the kids, and they wait for the UFOs to come in. It is the most fun thing to experience. If you're ever in that area, you've got to try it. It is just amazing because there's always a show. There's always not just a flyby, but I mean a show where these objects come in and they make right angle turns and they go straight up and straight down and they do loop to loops around each other and then take off. Things that our known planes cannot do. Our aircraft are not capable of that. So the people enjoy it. It's like a Saturday afternoon event.
Hmm. So basically, what you're talking about is a tailgate party.
Exactly. For UFOs with no fear.
Yeah. I know one of the places on the planet where you can go for those kinds of shows is Sedona, Arizona.
Right.
It is considered a series, it's considered to have a series of vortices, that kind of thing.
It's right down the hill from me. Yes, I know it
Yeah.
well.
And of course, I'm originally from Phoenix and have
Mhm.
gone up there many, many times. Matter of fact, I remember after I started driving, I took a solo trip up to Sedona from Phoenix because I was going up there to pick up what I did not see, of course, was
Uh-huh.
my present wife's wedding dress. It was all
Uh-huh.
sealed up in a box and everything. So I had to go up there and that was an interesting trip. But I remember as I was, I think I pulled off. This was before they put all the sidewalks and things in. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
at least they made the sidewalks the same color as the red rock. I mean, I give them credit for that, but I don't even recognize Sedona anymore. But anyway, I
It's
pulled
a
off.
tourist place now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I pulled off next to Bell Rock in their little parking
Yeah.
place, and I got out just to stretch my legs. And I was just looking up, and I saw a couple things moving around up there, but they certainly weren't lights that were moving like airplanes, similar to what you described. And I just thought, okay, well, there's some UFOs. I don't know. I don't think anything of it. It's for me, it's normal. It's like it's just what's there.
Yeah.
People and I know a lot of people, they get very excited and some people get scared because, they don't know who it is or what it is.
The unknown. Yeah.
Yeah, I've even heard stories of visitations in bedrooms, where
Mhm.
uh, 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 an ind an alien will materialize in the bedroom, the person will wake up and see them. They're
Hmm.
half asleep anyway, so they maybe think it's part of their dream. And then maybe there is an abduction in that regard and that kind of thing. So, I mean, just all kinds of different experiences. Have you
Hmm.
had anything like that, or seen them in the skies and so forth? As a documentarian, you'd have your camera rolling all the time.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the most impactful time I did not have a camera with me. I was actually driving with my parents to my grandfather's funeral in California. And Mom and I, it was a snowy January, full moon, middle of the night. We left about 11 p.m. and we looked out towards the peaks outside of Flagstaff. And Mom and I looked at each other. She was in French. She turned around, looked at me, and said, "Are you seeing this?" I said, "Yes." And there were little blue and red orbs flying around each other, and one big white, bright light. And we kept watching, went a little further, got to Navajo Depot, and this bright light kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And before long, it we could see it was a craft. And so we yelled at my dad, who was literally a rocket engineer. He worked with von Braun on the early missile systems. And we're yelling at him, "Stop the car." Finally, he stopped the car after arguing for a few minutes. We got out, we looked, and it was remarkable. It was an elongated craft, not a disc. It was huge. And all of the little colorful orbs we saw just went right up into it. And then it went over the freeway very, very slowly. And my dad said, "Where the hell would you land that thing? And how come there's no sound?" I mean, he was blown away as an engineer. How can
Hmm.
something that
Hmm.
big be up there with no noise? Trucks were starting to pull off to the side of the road. They were seeing it too, 18 wheelers. And we all just stood and watched it. We couldn't believe what we were seeing. It was so enormous. And then about 2 weeks later, it was seen down in the Prescott area of Arizona.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite amazing.
Yeah.
And out of that, we all had missing time. We ended up missing about 3 hours. At least our
Wow.
trip was about 3.5 hours longer than it should have been. Yeah. No, we just were back on the road almost to Kingman when we were cognizant of what was going on.
Why is why is our conversation and the subject of our conversation important?
Generally speaking, because any information that gets out there is important. It can help people that have had experiences like the conversation you and I just had about my sighting, one of my sightings. Um, it can help them feel more comfortable with what they've experienced or what they've seen. For others that say, well, something like that couldn't happen, that's okay too.
Hmm.
They need to have that structure for themselves. But there are many, many people out there looking for sort of a support system, even if it's only a verbal story
Hmm.
that they can relate to and understand. It also broadens the scope of knowledge. Whether you believe it or not, whether you've had an experience or not, it broadens your scope of knowledge. And if you can do that on a daily basis, you're moving so much faster than the rest of the planet. But that's such an important thing right now, especially with the number of sightings are increasing constantly, not just in our country, but all around the world.
Hmm.
The more
Interesting.
people are comfortable with this, the more when they see something, they're not going to be afraid. And by hearing stories like this, they're less afraid.
Brit Elders is my guest. We're talking about UFO Contact from the Pleiades. It's a book and DVD, and you can certainly go to her website, brielders.com. We certainly hope that you will check it out. Brielders.com will be linked to that website, as with all of the other interviews with Bri, and we'll continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan with Brit Elders, and talking about UFOs and so forth. It's fascinating. It's interesting that there is more believability of someone who has a miraculous experience. And when I use that term, I'm speaking maybe they saw the Virgin Mary, or they had a conversation with Paul the Apostle, or so on and so forth, or
Right.
in a near-death experience, they saw family members, and the list goes on. As opposed to the lack of believability on the part of people who saw a UFO or aliens, and so on and so forth. And yet, to me, they're both in the same category. They're rather mysterious as well as miraculous
Sure.
because we are having an experience with people who verify that we are not alone.
I think there is a little difference there. We're indoctrinated from the time we're born to believe that we are alone on this earth, the sole creation of the Creator. We've never been sort of nudged, even, or taught to think that the Creator may have created many, many other worlds.
Yeah.
Yet, even in the Bible, it says there are many mansions.
Hmm.
So, when you get into that type of aspect of a person being taught that they are so unique, that they are the only ones that are alive and sentient and being on this planet, it's a little different than angels and speaking to spirits or hearing spirits or even not just telepathy but synchronicity or being forewarned of an event, things like that.
Mm.
So it's limited in one direction, and that I think is very true. But it is mysterious and it is magical, and it has its own mysticism about it, because when you go through history, these things have been discussed throughout time. I mean, there are ancient paintings with UFOs. There are petroglyphs right here up at Hopi that depict UFOs. So it's not something that hasn't been known. It's just something that kind of in our own weird arrogance, we thought we were the only ones, when in truth, we probably are not.
Mm. Why why the heavy focus, and it's not just you but others,
Mhm.
on the Pleiades? I mean, are
Mm.
we not being visited from other parts of the
Many.
universe? It just seems like, Pleiades, Pleiades, Pleiades. It's all along the same lines of a few years back, everybody wanted to use the word quantum in front of whatever it was that they were doing.
Ever. Yes.
Quantum fried chicken and quantum this and quantum that. Why? What, what's
Right.
your investigation? What is there? Has there been an explanation as to why such a heavy focus on the Pleiades?
Yeah, I really think there is, and it's a logical one, and you don't have to go far for it. First of all, let me say, Meier said the Pleiadians told him that there were 105 different civilizations visiting Earth, and that was back in 1976. So we know there's a lot of others, and the descriptions of the individuals visiting us vary. They're from short grays to tall Nordics to Pleiadians who look much like us. But the Pleiades throughout history have carried a female connotation, a very peaceful, loving connotation throughout all of their contexts. And that's something that not only is it feminine and a very mellow, nurturing energy, it is also an educational energy. They taught the Mayas how to bring maize into their civilization in quinoa. They taught other indigenous peoples around the world to do various different forms of agriculture to make their agriculture and their crops better. Also, they taught um, how to have this wonderful view of the sky and what it meant and how to attract seasons and things like that. And when you get into the history of the Pleiades and really look at the lore attached to it, And this is mythology as well as oral legends throughout indigenous cultures. It's feminine, it's graceful, and it is helpful. And that is why I think so many people have this gravitation to the term Pleiades, but they do look for them. Plus, they are this, when you look up at night, especially in the northern hemisphere, and you see Orion's belt, right next to it, you're going to see the Pleiades. And it's
Mm.
just this beautiful, tiny little cluster of six stars that we can see with the naked eye, although seven are primary there. And they're beautiful, and your eye automatically goes to it.
Mm.
So there's something that I don't know if it's something in our past DNA, past life, whatever, that is making us look up there and react to those particular stars.
Mm. Now
If you ask
we,
someone where Arcturus is, they'll have a hard time finding it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now we refer to them as the Pleiades.
Yes.
Do the Pleiadians? I mean, I would venture that we couldn't pronounce it because they speak. Maybe they don't even speak. It's all telepathic.
Right.
Yeah.
They they told Billy they were from the Pleiades star system. That's why we use the term Pleiades in our books and our documentaries.
Mhm.
However, they say they're what they call each other is Plejaran.
Mm.
So that is their term. But they told Billy originally, and therefore we're carrying it through. They are from the Pleiades, and that's what we talk about.
It's
And
interesting, though.
you have to realize though too, their planet Era is one of many different planets in the Pleiades because
Hmm.
the Pleiades is a big star system, even though it looks very tiny, it's big.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with one set of Pleiadians. How many there are, we don't know.
Well, now, the Robinsons, they were headed towards Alpha Centauri.
Hmm.
Where's the connection? Is there a connection other than being in outer space? Is there a connection to Alpha Centauri? Is that one of the planets? Because I'm not an astronomer. Even maybe I should be asking my friend Dr. Sky Steve Cates
Right.
about that. But what about Alpha Centauri? I mean, it seems to be that. Well, we talk about it a lot. Why aren't there
Right.
aliens beings coming from Alpha Centauri?
But there are.
Oh,
I don't think it's directly related to the Pleiades at all. But oh gosh, I think the first case I came across was actually occurred in 1965, I'm pretty sure. And they claim to have contact with beings from Alpha Centauri. Um, since then, it has been fairly rare. It's not like Sirius or um, Arcturus, which is a big one. A lot of people have contacts from Arcturus, but Alpha Centauri does come up quite often, and that's an interesting thing because it was one of the first cases I ever heard about, and it was a fisherman that had he had actually cast his line, was sitting there relaxing, and behind him he heard a noise, and he turned around, and there was a craft, and it was coming down, and it landed, and he was not the type of person that you would ignore. The man was very knowledgeable when it came to nuclear and
hmm.
how that all went together and everything else. He had worked at Los Alamos. He was very involved in different projects like that. And yet he claimed to have had contact, a face-to-face, sit-down conversation with beings from our or from Alpha Centauri.
Hmm. What about our present day technologies? There is speculation that much of what we have today has alien origins. There's no way that a human being, no matter how high the IQ or how creative and imaginative, would have ever been able to develop some of the things that we have today. What's the theory on that?
Well, there's several. One of them is the fact that we have reverse engineered crashed disks
Mhm.
and learned from that and created our own form of their technology, something that works here on planet Earth. There are other theories that say people like um, Einstein, Elon Musk, these brilliant brains that have created so much and furthered the concept of science are actually being inputted with information from out there, from other beings.
Hmm.
So you have that one. And then you have the whole thing, and this is kind of a smaller group, but they think that extraterrestrials have actually been working with various government agencies to help us get past certain roadblocks we had when it came to technology. I don't know which is factual. I've never had that type of experience. I've talked to people that promote all sides of it, but I don't know which one it is. But the possibilities all seem possible and in some cases probable. I think the use of telepathic contact and therefore telepathic input is not too far ranging at all.
Hmm. We're talking with Brit Elders and, of course, talking about UFOs. I am thoroughly annoyed with the fact that the government has chosen to change the acronym from
Yeah,
UFO to UAP and then a bunch of others as well. It's like when you
right.
start changing the words that are being used about something that we've talked about for decades, if not centuries, there's something going on there. It's like there's a hidden agenda because there's no
Exactly.
reason to change it. An unidentified flying object, that's pretty clear to me. I don't even know what unidentified AP, airplane?
Aerial phenomena.
Oh, aerial
Yeah.
phenomenon.
The
Clouds are
phenomena gives it
unidentified
a
aerial
way out.
phenomenon.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
See, the phenomena word gives it a way out
Yeah.
because it is not a flying object now. In the Meier case, we called it an IFO, an identified flying object. They actually said, we're from the Pleiades. Here are our craft takes pictures of them. But with the new terminology, phenomena gives it a way out. It could be swamp gas. It could be. You have all these possibilities that don't take it to it
Yeah.
is an object, a physical, solid thing that is in the sky. And
So then
that
the
there's a difference.
Yeah, so then the hearings were actually a sham because if they're changing the terminology, they can say whatever they want in these hearings, even if it's factual, even if it's
Yeah,
accurate, and they can still say, phenomenon. We don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
And that's unfortunate, but it gives people a way out,
Yeah,
which some people need.
I guess. I guess so. Britt Elders, my guest here on the program. BritElders.com is the website. We're talking about UFOs. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just going to be staunch in my position on that.
Grant.
And UFO Contact from the Pleiades. It's the book and it is a DVD as well. Hope you'll get a copy. Go to BritElders.com. We'll be linked as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. The aspect of human beings being the only sentient, okay, I'll say conscious, because sometimes I wonder, beings in the universe.
Right.
We started out centuries ago believing that the Earth was the center of the universe. Why
Mm.
the center? I guess there's a position of nobility in being the center, okay, of importance, if you will. Then we found out, oops, we weren't the center of the universe because we began looking further and further out with better and better telescopes. And then we find out that there are literally, I think the number is in the trillions of galaxies.
Hmm.
Just be using basic math, and we don't even know where the universe ends. They say there is, a wall or there's an end to the universe where the galaxies all stop. But how are we going to know that? Because we're looking from inside, shall we say, the sphere outward,
Right.
you know.
The Pleiadians say there is no end to the universe.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. It just perpetually continues.
Yeah. How much credence do you put into many of the reports of sightings and experiences and even going into the area of abductions,
Hmm.
especially in let's just say the last, say, 20 years?
Yeah. I think that I put a lot of credence into it. I've met with a lot of these people, had hours of discussion with them. The contactees are very interesting because they feel a connection to whomever they're connected with, whatever outside group that is, and they feel that they need to express what they're being told. The abductees, there's two types that I've come across. The abductee that, like Travis, openly, willingly walks towards a craft and basically invites a contact.
Yeah.
True, he was abducted, he was taken, but he initiated that. He's the one that stepped forward and looked up and said, "Oh my gosh, what are you?" And then he's gone. Then there are the contactees that type that we were kind of talking about a second ago that are removed from their bedroom by beings and have experiences that are very traumatic. So
Mm.
there are types of abductees, one that's a semi-contactee and one that is seriously abducted. I take all of their stories as credible because that's their experience. I don't have a way of saying or judging this did happen or that didn't happen, other than what I feel in my heart.
Mm.
And I would say a good 90% of the cases that I have spent time with and worked with these individuals, I would say something happened to them that affected them greatly, whether it was greatly on a positive level or greatly on a negative level.
Mm.
The ones that felt that they were negatively affected are working to overcome that negativity and open up more to the potential of what could be there if they were more receptive and not fear-based in their views. So
Mm.
that I find interesting as well.
I want to ask you about the makeup of the experiencers, and that covers all of these different realms.
Right.
Many times in the media, whether there's documentaries aside from yours, or just, little short pieces, the individual experiencers seem to be, they appear to be less educated on the lower end of the economic scale and so forth
Mhm.
and so on. In other words, they're not necessarily the cream of the crop if you depending upon your categorizations.
Right.
I mean, what about people like an Elon Musk or a Bezos or any of the other millionaire, billionaire, trillionaires out there? Uh,
Yeah.
are there any of these people at those levels, education and economics and so on and so on and so on, prominent people who have come out and spoken out and said, "Hey, yes, I saw it, I talked with it, I was abducted, etc., etc."
There have been a couple, but not many, understandably. Um, if Elon Musk, let's just use him as an example because he's so present day.
Hmm.
If he came out and said, "I had contact with extraterrestrials," what happens to him as an
Hmm.
individual? Forget about his businesses and wealth and all of that. As an individual, you go through that 50% split that says, this guy's crazy, and the other one that says, aha, that explains why his brain works the way it does. So you're going to have that push pull. I don't see it in the interest at this point of extraterrestrials that visit here to have massive contacts, to have contacts with specific individuals that would come out and say that they had contact. Whether they do or not, or did or not, who knows?
Hmm.
Whether it's an input, I don't know. But it is interesting to me that they found basically middle class people,
Hmm.
normal people, some very uneducated people, and some that are educated, extremely educated. I know of psychologists, I know of doctors, I know of attorneys, I know of pilots that have had experiences, but they do not want to come forward because it would ruin their life.
Yeah.
I get that. And it's unfortunate. It is so sad to me because we've got to get past this judgment issue. I mean, when
Hmm.
a pilot sits down and tells you, not only did I see the object, but I had some form of communication with it,
Yeah.
not knowing what was inside of it, that's pretty profound. And this guy's been flying for the last 40 years, and he's an ex-Navy pilot. And, there's just so much credibility to him, but he doesn't want his name out there. He
Yeah.
doesn't want his family harassed, and he doesn't want to be harassed. And there will be those that do that.
All right. There is that phrase in real estate that you hear quite often: location, location, location. Where on the planet are we seeing the majority of these experiences? And again, that I'm using that as a broad term.
Brad term. Mexico is still the forefront of what's going on. Since 1991, it has been wave after wave after wave of different types of ships, well over 10,000 videotapes of these things. It's on the front page of the main newspapers. It's on the 6 o'clock news. They talk about it, they're open to it. People are very receptive. So much more information is coming in. Japan has recently had quite a string of sightings. Um, More and more here in the US, primarily in the Southwest and in the Midwest, we're having a lot of sightings.
Hmm.
Europe, not so much lately.
Hmm.
It's been relatively quiet. The Middle East, I think, because of the conflict, a lot of sightings, not contact, but
Right.
a lot of sightings. And different military sources are talking about these things that are watching what's happening. They appear, they're there, they're hard, they're physical looking objects in the sky, and then poof, they're gone. So something is observing them that has the ability to materialize and dematerialize. The same is true in Ukraine. Had several soldiers that have reported different sightings at different times during the combat. So I do think that um, all of them out there are probably watching us, looking at us as their little brothers and sisters, and wondering if we're going to destroy ourselves.
In my conversation with the woman I spoke with, Sora is her name, Sora Ara, and
Mhm.
she says that the information she has, despite the fact that there is evidence to prove that humanity has wiped itself out 5 times,
Mhm.
according to the Pleiadians, we won't do it a sixth. It isn't going to be easy, but
Right.
there is hope, she says. She says there is hope that we will not do it a sixth time.
I
Uh,
agree.
what that will look like, we don't know, but I suppose that's certainly a good thing.
Yeah, we're going through growing pains.
Yeah.
To extraterrestrial visitors, we got to look like kids in a sandbox at this point.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
haven't learned how to live together yet. We haven't learned how to communicate. And that's such a big deal, especially since we're talking about going into space. We're going to set up bases on the moon and on Mars and
Hmm.
go even further out there. Yet we're not willing to recognize that other civilizations may exist out there. And we're not willing to recognize that each of us has independent thought, has the right to that independent thought. And yet we have to learn how to work together with that independent thought.
Yeah.
So we've got a ways to go. But I think there's hope for us too. I am not at all down on humankind at all.
Yeah.
I think we can do it. I think we can learn from each other if we will just get out of our head and get in our heart. We'll be okay.
I'm with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm not in favor of terraforming other planetary bodies until we
Right.
re-terraform where we live now. And I don't
Bravo.
even go into the conversation of climate change, as I think I shared with you on a previous program.
Right.
We need to clean up our home. And that has nothing to do with climate change. It's cleaning up our home. They're talking about firing up 3 Mile Island again. That is not
Yeah,
cleaning up our home. People, and I understand where the phrase clean energy comes from when
yeah.
talking about nuclear energy. The generating of the energy is clean. It's
Hmm.
what you do with the
Aftermath.
fuel rods when they're spent. They are
It's
now
the same thing.
contaminants.
That's right. It's the same thing though with wind turbines. Same thing. What do you do with those blades? They're not recyclable. They fill up the landfill. They leak chemicals. Look at the oil that's leaked out of wind turbines.
Yeah.
Same thing.
And
I mean,
solar. I'm sure there's a downside with the
there
solar
are
panels as
downsides.
well.
That's right.
And I know that Tesla and what he was working on in the early part of the last century and everything, uh, sure, it's one of those paradoxes. I mean, before electricity, I mean, to be honest with you, before electricity, we were doing just fine. All right. We were growing our crops. We were feeding our kids. There was an economy. Okay. And so on and so forth. And, we had industry of a sort, manufacturing. It was certainly done by hand. Everything was until electricity came along.
Times were slower. Yeah,
They were slower, but like that's a problem because we're
exactly.
we're here for less than a puff of smoke, ladies and gentlemen. We really are. And so to be without electricity, yeah, from where we are today, that's a throwback. But
Mhm.
we, the one attribute of the human race that I think we're not willing to take a look at, and that is this: we adapt. We
That's
always
right.
we always have, and we always will. So to go without electricity, we'll adapt. Okay.
Yeah,
It'll be rough for a while. There's no question about it. And I will tell you too that one of the things that I would begin the process of doing is, as far as a home, I'm not going to have a structure built out in the middle of the open area, even if it is surrounded by trees. No, I'm going to dig into the side of a hill or a
yeah,
mountain because it'll be cool in the summer and warm in the winter.
yeah. It's
You know,
natural.
it's natural, and
Yeah.
I mean, take a look at the bears, and they sleep for 6 months. For 3 or 4 or 5 months out of the year in the wintertime in
Mhm.
preparation for spring. So it's like the farther forward we go technologically, sometimes you have to wonder. And then, of course, we have then this experience that we have with these folks that are coming in from other parts of the universe.
Right.
105 different species
Mhm.
visiting the planet. That's interesting. And I'm sure that there are those who are in communication with them or in contact in some fashion. Do you hold do you feel that because you talked about the sort of the downloading of information in
Mhm.
terms of our technology moving forward. In other words, human beings didn't come up with this stuff. That information was downloaded into individuals who
Mhm.
then created those things.
Right.
I had heard at one point that there was this intergalactic agreement that they had a prime directive of non-interference.
Right.
And yet that is
Go to
sort
interference.
but it is interference. What are
How
your
do you
thoughts?
define it? How do you define it?
That's a good point.
That's the key. Because is interference helping us progress as we want to progress? Is interference creating a battle or stopping one? The Pleiadians said the only time they would interfere globally is
Mhm.
if we got to a point where we were going to annihilate the planet. It didn't have anything to do with humans, as
Right.
far as they were concerned. It was the planet, because that would create a ripple throughout space, and
Hmm.
that would be a problem. Humankind, in their description, incarnates. So we would be coming back, we would return, but the planet would not. And
Yeah.
that's why they look at it that way.
I heard a great riff by George Carlin about that and how people want to save the planet.
Yeah.
Save the planet? The planet's been here for X number of millions
Yeah.
of years. You think that we could destroy the planet? I don't know whether it's true or false, but his argument is certainly valid. And that's
Hmm.
why I always keep going back to clean up our home.
Exactly. But I got to add to that because you talk about cleaning up your home.
Yeah.
Yes, clean up your home, but clean up your home, your heart.
Yes.
Start
Yes.
here,
Yeah.
work out from there. And in the process of that, all of these cultures, all of these people that I've talked to that have had experiences, they are all being told the groups they're meeting with are self-sufficient. We've forgotten how to do that. We are just beginning to hit a phase again. And for me, it's great. People want to start small gardens, even container gardens. They
Mhm.
want to be more productive in taking care of their own food supplies.
Yeah.
I mean, where I live, I have been up here without power in the dead of winter, under 10 feet of snow for 2 weeks at a time. You learn to think differently. You
Yes.
do adjust. Humans are very flexible, even though many of us don't think we are. We are really flexible. Okay, I have to have this much wood in. This will get me through the night. This will get me to the morning. I'm going to cook in the fireplace. What can I cook? Your brain starts to really work in a completely different way.
Yeah.
When spring comes, you start planting what you want to eat. And then fall comes, you start canning it. It is a different concept of taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
If you start in your heart and you work your way out through your home, literal home, you'll be fine.
Listen to that still small voice. It'll guide you. I've seen a lot of well, not, I guess they would be documentaries of a sort, of individuals who will be video
Uh-huh.
recorded, living over the course, literally over the span of like a year or more. And then, of
Yeah.
course, I mean, can you imagine? I can't even imagine the editing job that would require. But that's exactly what they show you. Like in the winter, they start to get low on food, so the guy's going out and he's got his gun, he's got the bullets, he's got all this kind of stuff, and he now has to go out and find food.
Hmm.
And sometimes he comes back with a rabbit, and sometimes he comes back with an elk or a deer or whatever. It's something large, and
Right?
that'll feed them for several weeks, maybe a month. And even though they planned, they also have plan B, which is okay, if we run down low on food, I will have to go out and so forth.
Yeah.
And I enjoy watching those. And then of course they show the building of their home, whether it's into the side of a hill or whether it's on the surface with logs or whatever materials are
Mhm.
around them. And it's quite remarkable how these programs are put together and how they show the resiliency. Because sometimes, even during these different seasons, they run into a roadblock. And okay, all right, well, here's the situation.
Yeah.
All right, so how do we work around this or work through it and so, or get over this and so forth? And they find a way. There are even these competitions. Matter of fact, I remember vaguely remember like maybe 10 individuals. There's 10 men and women, and
Uh-huh.
they transport them out to a place where they cannot depart from because they're hundreds and hundreds of miles away from civilization.
Uh-huh.
And they have a certain amount of supplies and tools, and they now must make a living space for themselves for the next maybe 6 months. And it just so happens that, oh, you've just been deposited in late summer. So 6 months into late summer, you're going to be here
Bit of winter.
till
Yeah.
before the thaw. So you
Mhm.
better plan and so on and so forth. And I think there was like a million in this particular competition. It was like $1 million or 100,000 or something.
Uh-huh.
But the things that, and they even had, they would do checks every, I guess every month.
Uh,
The folks putting this on would go in to check on them. They would actually do a health check to make
wow.
sure that they could continue on. Well, of course, if you're living in the pioneer days, there is no health check.
Yeah.
and you have to be very careful. Do the Pleiadians, in this case, as that's what we're talking about, the information that you have gathered or that you have been given privy to from the people who have experienced, had the experiences, what about their living lifestyle, if you will?
Yeah, they are all self-sufficient. They all feed themselves. They live in individual houses. They raise families like we do. They do eat meat, which oddly enough surprises some people. But protein is an important part of the physical body's needs.
Mhm, mhm.
And they eat a rabbit type creature. That's their main source of meat. But they grow their own vegetables. And that is the primary source of food.
Yeah.
So, but I found that not just with the Pleiadians, but with other cultures.
Hmm.
They've told people, create a garden. Not only are you connecting with nature, which is beneficial to you as an individual, but you are becoming self-sustaining,
Yeah.
which is enormous to you as an individual. Changes your mindset when you have to do that.
Yeah. What about the inner life, the spiritual life?
Yeah.
What is that like?
Well, with the Palladians, they believe in creation, that they don't identify it as male or female. It is creation. It exists in all things. It's sort of we could equate it to an American Indian approach of the existence of creation in all things, whether it's a rock, a feather, whether it's the soul. And they believe it exists that way throughout the universe. And you need to be connected to it. That is the true and only connection is to creation. And in that, you're connected to each other. And
Mm.
that's why the American Indian term, we are all related, Lakota term primarily. It's very important to realize that through that connection to creation, we're all the same.
You know, the one thing that strikes me, it just occurred to me, and I've watched a number of programs that have been created by, specifically by Kevin Costner regarding the Duttons and so forth.
Mhm.
1833, 1923 is another one.
Right.
And the thing that strikes me when I think about the American West and all of the struggles that the Native Americans went through, and all of the different tribes that were there,
Hmm.
that they did not recognize, at least it doesn't appear to me, that they recognized their similarity to one another, their community, and that they would band together and say, no, you are not coming through our land.
They were very clannish, weren't they?
They were, you
Yeah,
know,
I
and I mean, now we refer to them as Native Americans. There are those who argue that no, they weren't the first ones here. You know,
yeah,
they're not native to this land. There was another group prior to them. All right, we can argue that if you want. But it just seems that if that whole thing is that's kind of why I asked you before about the socioeconomic makeup of
yeah.
experiencers, I should say.
Hmm.
Back to the Pleiades. What about their economic system? Do they have one?
They do. It's different than ours. It's not you buy services. It's not a money exchange. It's a barter exchange. They've gone through an educational process where each person, you have a soul resonation to what you do. They recognize that. Again, this is a telepathic society, so they don't have crime and that kind of thing. You wouldn't get away with it. But there is a soul recognition to what you are best suited for. So in Simyasa's case, that was Billy Meier's contact. She was to be a cosmonaut. She understood space, understood all the different characteristics and needs that went into traveling through space and communication, as she had with Meier. So you have that happening. But when you're back on their planet era, they have a barter system. Someone needs a specific vegetable, they'll trade it for a specific type of meat, that type of thing. But because they are so self sustaining, they don't need a monetary system like we have. It's not, somebody asked me once, Well, that sounds really socialistic, but it isn't because they are very individualistic in what they do, how they think, all of that. It's not like the government comes in and gives you X, Y, and Z. It is the fact that each family has a home, each family raises its children. They do go to school, but their views of school are different than ours. Rather than pushing them to be something that they are not innately able to do,
Hmm.
they let that innate ability come forward and the person succeeds then. So there isn't this success and lack of success struggle that we have going on here.
Hmm. Do they have anything like our media? And we could list all the different types, but it's only been around since the camera was invented.
Right.
Uh, Anything like that in terms of,
You know
let
what?
me make it broader. Entertainment. Entertainment.
I imagine they find us entertaining. But, Richard, I've never asked that question, so I don't know. That's a really great question. I will ask Billy next time we talk.
Yeah, when do they hold their Oscars? We'd like to tune in.
I would like to see that statue. Yeah.
Education you talked about, in that regard. And obviously, if there is a telepathic aspect to their communications, it
Yeah.
seems to me that education is a pretty easy process, and that you cannot hide
Yes.
anything from anyone. In other words, I know that there are people who are up in arms over this. Oh, what the heck is the name of this curriculum that people are all bent out of shape about, that teaches kids to hate America?
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember now. I was thinking of one thing. Anyway, and I said, well, I think it's misnamed, because I've talked with some educators and they don't teach it the way that the media is telling people that it's being taught, and that if they
Uh-huh.
were, they would be corrected. Um, I would say if you're going to teach this particular curriculum, you want to teach the good, the bad, and the ugly, but you don't put any emphasis on any of those
Exactly.
parts. All of those parts have made us as a country who and what we are, just like our dark side as human beings makes us that.
Very, very true. And so important and something we don't recognize because we tend to look forward, usually as a culture,
Right.
but we don't take into account what got us to that forward movement.
Yeah.
And that's so important because it's all valuable. It has taught us something along the way. You can't ignore it. That's why,
No.
for me, taking down a statue of someone is pretty irresponsible
Yeah.
because it's taking part of a lesson of how we got to where we are
Yeah.
out of the equation.
I
And
mean,
that's not fair.
there may be those who will look at that and say, see, this guy did this and it was a great thing. That's fine. That's that person's perspective.
Right.
But what you have stated is absolutely true, that it's like cutting off your arm and saying, oh, it did a bad thing. And I know that there's an Old Testament adage to that. There's even, I think, in the Quran also,
Right.
if you steal, you're going to have your hand chopped off, and so on and so forth. But you
Learn
still,
from the process
exactly,
because it's been a process that we've come through.
exactly.
We've gained something from every one of those experiences. Do not disvalue it.
Yeah. There are those who are going to take a look at the last, well, when this cycle is done, it will be 4, 8, 12 years. They will take a look
Uh,
at the past 12 years, the front four and the back four, and say, I want to erase that from history. You can't. You can't,
right.
because that is how we got past those 12 years.
Exactly.
And if you want to expand that out to more years, that's fine. You can't change that. We're watching, for example, the series 1923.
Uh-huh.
And obviously, back then, the Catholic Church, the clergy were less than friendly with the what we'll refer to again as the Native Americans,
Right.
trying to beat out of them almost literally Indian and make sure that they only speak English and they learn the English history and the language and the this and that and the other.
Yeah.
And it's hard to watch sometimes because I don't like,
Important.
I don't like to see that kind of stuff. It's bad enough when it's made up in movies and
Yeah.
television, but when this is pretty historically accurate, and thankfully,
It's invaluable.
yeah,
It is so important. I'll give you an example. First of all, my mom's Danish, my dad's Cherokee and Choctaw. So I'm fully aware of this. My grandfather did everything, great grandfather did everything he could to avoid being put on a reservation in Oklahoma or Arkansas. They ended up sticking him there anyway and taking away all his land. I see what happens right up here on the reservations, both in Navajo and Hopi. Great, wonderful, incredible people. And yet we prefer they don't learn their language. We prefer that they speak English only. They were here before we were.
yeah, yeah,
Let them speak what they want to, learn both, which they're willing to do. But the whole thing, I mean, look at the American Indian women that go missing every year.
yeah,
It's a huge problem. It's not addressed in the media enough. Things like that are still happening. They're not quite as prevalent as the priest beating
yeah,
the Indian out of the Indian,
yeah.
but it happens.
Well,
It just happens in more subtle ways.
here's the catch 22. One of the ways that we won, the United States helped to win World War II, was by using what they referred to as the
Navajo,
code talkers, the Navajo. What
yeah,
if they had lost their language? Who
yeah,
knows how much longer that war would have gone on?
true, very true.
And then there's other aspects too with other races, other species, other other nationalities. I think
Right.
of the anti-Semitic commentary,
Yes,
and I think, wait a minute, hold on. You hate them because they took over the media. You hate them because they took over the financial industry. You should be praising them and thanking them that they took those innate abilities, kind of like what you described the Pleiadians and their educational system. They created this. And then, of course, the Black Wall Street in Oklahoma. You should
yeah,
be praising them for the fact that they have the ability, not
that's right.
patronizing, but praising them for doing that very thing. Because we do that with people who have disabilities and they overcome them. I mean, I've heard that from
Right.
people regarding my own legal blindness. Oh, it's incredible what you've accomplished and blah 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 blah. Well, but people of different races, they've done the same thing. And it's no wonder why the tribes who are deep, deep, deep in the what's left of the Amazon jungle don't want to come out.
Exactly. That is so true. I've been there.
You know?
I've talked to people that are Shuar in Ecuador. They're not interested in getting westernized or living in civilization. They're content out there in the jungle.
Yeah.
They just, a few things are great. Those are comforts that they enjoy, and it's like an ice cream treat on a Sunday afternoon or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But they're very happy knowing that they're so connected to the earth, that they are so connected to all of the world around them, and they don't have to play in civilization
Yeah.
and, in their view, be manipulative.
Yeah.
Not manipulated, manipulative, because that's how they view the outside.
Yeah. They don't need a phone. They live close enough together. They just walk across the compound or what have you to talk to the person.
Right.
It's very interesting. We are talking with Brit Elders. BritElders.com is the website. The DVD and book that are available to you are basically put this way, folks: UFO Contact from the Pleiades. Again, it is a book and a DVD. Hope you'll get a copy of it by going to her website, which we will be linked to, which once again is BritElders.com, BritElders.com, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Britt, I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed having you on the program again, and look forward to future conversations because new information does come out. And
Hmm.
these conversations we're having actually need to be had more often because we don't have all the answers. We're all learning and growing and experiencing, and we'll bring to the table some new ideas, some new thoughts. Which is the whole idea of Tell Me Your Story. We
Right.
have this giant smorgasbord table, and each program we put all of that stuff there on the table and ask people to come and partake. We hope they will, but if not, find something that you like, and then come back after you've read or what have you partook of that particular thing because it might open you up to something that you weren't interested in before, but now it's kind of piqued your curiosity. So I thank you for being a part of that.
Oh, Richard, thank you, because I think what you're doing, bringing all of this information, not just on UFOs, but on such a variety of topics to the people, is really important. They began to actually open up like little rose blossoms out there. It's so wonderful. I've talked to many people that have listened to your show after we did it the
Hmm.
first time, and they are just absolutely amazed that there's so many things they did not have access to prior to hearing you. So
Well,
congrats for that.
well, thank you very much. I am going to ask you those three questions I ask all of my guests, and even
Uh-huh.
as we go through one program after another, sometimes the answers change. Before I ask those questions, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. We are giving you new paradigms for new world choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and then Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all of those times at richarddugan.com with podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. We're also on YouTube where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will. And I also hope that you will pick up a copy of Choices 5 Steps for Life. There is a link at richarddugan.com that takes you straight to the page for purchasing your copy, hardcover, paperback, or Kindle. Audible is on its way. We also ask if you'd like to be a part of the work that we are doing financially. We could use all the help we can get. We have a PayPal account. There's a link on the homepage of richarddugan.com to that PayPal account as well. And, give what you can. And if you can only send us energetic healing support, hey, we're open to it. Thank you, thank you, thank you for those who have helped and to those who will help. And finally, we ask that you take some time to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still small voice. I call it the decade of perfect vision because in that place, you will see perfectly when you get that inspiration, that insight, that guidance, that information from that still small voice. And we hope you'll do that. We now move on to our final three questions for a very special guest. And of the first of those is who is Brit Elders?
I am a learning individual, learning something constantly every single day and loving that aspect of life.
Hmm. What gets you up in the morning?
Gratitude
And what was your best day?
every day,
Hmm.
today, right now.
Wonderful. Well, once again, Britt, thank you so much for joining us. And again, thank you folks for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to lull. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life. To my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.